When I introduced to my friend Jonathan Stalls, Jonathan spent 242 days walking across the United States in 2010. He was an artist, a poet, a justice advocate, and a forever student. He finished his studies at the Living School for Action Contemplation in 2017 and has guided walking human movement meditations for years. He founded Walk to Connect in 2012 and created Intrinsic Paths in 2016. And Jonathan, as I said, I found this quote. Jesus said this to someone. I didn't know who it was, but he said basically, no one, having put his hand to the plow and looking back, is fit for the kingdom of God. No one, having put his hands to the plow and looking back, is fit for the kingdom of God. How does that resonate with you? And we just finished, before we started recording, talking about forward movement, about what is ours to do.
Yeah, brother. I'm just, first, thank you. I'm honored to be here with you. Loved connecting with you in the ways that we have in the last year. I think for me, the thing that just comes up that feels very, I feel like it's saturated in crisis, but also in like just blazing color and creativity, but just this like blank canvas of how to have, how to kind of go into our edges around our intuition, around what just isn't working for human thriving and planet thriving and soul thriving, like what things just have created so many blocks between you and I and me and you, and these and to be of a brave and imaginative way in the canvas of how we do relationship, in the canvas of how we think about day-to-day being. All of it just feels very, it's an undoing, and it's also just this, how am I setting up the canvas? How am I putting my body and my heart and my spirit into this creative realm? And that's not just paint and art, like in some of the ways we've defined art, but it's just this intuitive spaces between, let's go into the uncharted middle in a lot of ways. Anyway, yeah, there's a lot there. So I resonates very deeply, brother, very much.
Yeah, I rode across the country on a bicycle. You walked across the country. This image of pushing the plow, it's hard work, right? It takes stamina, it takes perseverance, it takes courage.
Yeah.
And then there are people who, get to a point where that plow is just too much, too much to bear, and they walk back, right? And I don't think Jesus meant, that you won't get into the kingdom in terms of, I personally believe that the kingdom is here, the kingdom is now, right?
Amen. Yes.
And so you might not experience the light that I think both of us have been gifted to have, these fleeting moments of beauty, of light, that I think you're talking to in art and its many different manifestations, right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
When you and I first met, you took me walking. You took a group of us walking. So can you talk a little bit about that? It seems simple, right?
Yeah.
Walking,
Yes.
but incredibly complex. So
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, James. One of the things, and just alongside just what you just shared there too, around, um, there's something about, and as you were framing this, like the light or the like the color of, there's something about aliveness, where you're feeling all the things, like you're feeling like there's the like you're tasting. Creative energy, love energy, grief energy, anger energy, intuitive, and it's like it feels like a proximity to that color, to that aliveness. So it's not always calm and serenity and peaceful and relaxing, feet up. It's like it's actually a lot of times like through wounding and scabs and falling and really not having any idea where you are in some settings, like just, but there's this like proximity to feeling and being alive, that there is, at least in moments, the situation you're in, the ecosystem that you've thrown yourself in, or the situation that you've landed in, whatever it is, that those moments of where there's just less false artificial stuff trying to come in and define what that should be for you. And like there's just that aliveness is very anyway, I just, that was coming up as you were sharing it, because and so connected to your question about walking and human movement. I mean, that is like my sacred song of embodiment. And it's very, like you said, it's very human. It's not like this new gimmick. It's not like, oh, you got to try this, it's just out. It's like, beloveds, we are made to move in a way that is feeling the earth under our feet, or our wheelchairs if we're on a powered stroller or a wheelchair, like an unhurried, attentive, scanning, flexible, adaptive, resilient, slow growing, forming, rooting. It's like these things that come with unhurried movement, both, I think, just obviously physiologically in the brain and in the heart and in the cellular level, at the neuro level, all the things, but from that like alive proximity standpoint, that there's less artificial time separating and bypassing you from me and me from you, you from the tree and the tree from you, you and the flowing stream and the flowing stream from you, you and me who cross the path, who are radically different in terms of where we've come from, but what an opportunity to slowly move together and find where we can come together. And so the walking unhurried pace is like, to me, is just this, it's one branch out of this big old tree that feels so just all consuming when it comes to invitation for aliveness and that creative forward, like kind of like what you started with that quote, just that, here's the world as it is. The walking can be painful and even violent, depending on so many scenarios, depending on the skin that I'm in, depending on my age, my body, my capacity, where I am. I mean, all these things where the walking is, and it's really complex. And there's something about like moving slowly and not being able to fully, like, to just not have any sense really of what the sunset's gonna, like what the sunset's gonna look like and what it's gonna teach, what's just past the next 10, 15, 20 minute horizon, what's around the tree, who's gonna come around the corner. There's so much there. I could go on, but yeah.
I feel we could talk for hours, brother.
Rather we could talk some.
You just saw all these images you brought to my mind. I remember my first time across the country. I was in Kansas, which is a fairly flat state, and has some really gnarly winds. And on top of the winds, you have these little burrs from the weed. What are they called? Weevils, right? Yeah. And so I kept getting flat tires. And
Absolutely.
I kept wind. And I remember standing on my bike at one point and pedaling and going nowhere and cursing whatever was impeding my forward movement. So
Wow.
tell me about those moments that, like, now I relish going back there, right? Like, at this point in my life, having had that moment,
Yeah.
which actually I interpret differently now than then I was frustrated. I was angry. I didn't understand it, but there was so much to teach in that moment, because obviously I'm here, right? I've moved beyond the obstacle. And so talk to me about that as we encounter these blocks, these walls. I mean, literally, that people
Literally.
to encounter, right?
Oh my gosh.
How do we get beyond? How do we move to the next moment?
Mm. Yeah, it feels like there's so much fumbling around all of it. It's far from linear to me, and so unique to each of us and our own lacing and wiring and experience. Being in Colorado, in Denver, in a, like that's so much of my kind of geographic environmental context, USA, so colonialism and systemic racism, and so much rooted in consumption and consuming as a way of being, and layers of what I just feel very inhuman, and like so much inhuman energy coming into what gets in the way between our hearts genuinely connecting and not extracting from each other, not having all these other strings that are defining these stories for us. And wherever we come out of and around these different threads, it just feels like the blocks are there's so much, to me, room for not only bravery, creativity, and courage, but time and tenderness around how we have the capacity to resist speed and bypassing and extracting, using that word again, like bypassing any of these stories of what was never human to begin with in so many ways, like the taking and the like. So thinking about a block, like you framed, like even just on the bike, and you're kind of like, there's just something, I think about all the time and it's funny you mentioned Kansas, because when I did my cross country walk, Kansas was like rough so I had amazing families and there were incredible experiences, but I was just getting into Kansas, and there were the heat of the humidity of eastern Kansas and western Missouri. James, I was dying, and I was facing all these big blocks, and but I attribute just that. I attribute getting through them or moving with them even, because I was moving at a more tender pace. There was something in the tenderness of my pace, and I don't know that I would describe my reactions all the time as tender, but there was something where I had to move with the block. I couldn't just bypass it, turn it off, numb it out. I could, but because of the pace that I was entrusting myself to, and just having enough strength just to take the next step, to not need to know, or to not be focused on outcome, to not be feeding expectation, to just wake up tomorrow and just let like one step at a time, allow things to arise from the ground up, and not from this, I'm going to control this situation from the top down, like from my mind down almost. And I feel like that kind of invitation around so many things, whatever defines blocks for each of us, the ground up, unhurried, moment by moment, kind of breath by breath emergence, really, of how to move with, even relate maybe to, and learn from the block, and let it kind of uncover all these other things and stories, and so then what comes with that, from that, and so that's a lot. I know I've kind of circled around, but it feels very like, yeah, there's a relationship to pace, and also to, wow, like what are my defaults around the blocks, and where did those defaults come from? Like, what am my rage against this, or my reaction to this, or my wanting to numb this, or like where are the tools, or the lack of tools to heal with and around the blocks? Oh, I don't know. So there's a lot there, but it's a good question, man.
You said that open-heartedness, like I initially, looking back on how I presented what it takes to stay on the plow, I did vulnerability, tension, creativity, curiosity, like these beautiful soft skills we don't put a lot of value on in the world that we've been raised in. And I don't even know if they're soft.
Right.
So,
right.
Love in itself.
Yeah.
Is so powerful. I don't want to get this, so I'm going to open up. I just spent a week at the symposium.
Yes. Oh, how was that for you?
Our teacher, Cynthia and Richard, James, and now Barbara and Brian McLaren and Barbara Holmes. Cynthia talked about the law of three, and this affirming, denying, and reconciling force. And I think what you just talked about, the beauty, the imagination, the possibility, is really the reconciling force, right? That there's no space for in moments like the ones we are facing, because there's so much rage and anger and divisiveness and hatred and all these denying forces that are coming, but at the same time, they're clearing out a path, right, for what is to come. Which I kind of want to take us at this last part of our conversation in terms of someone I recently interviewed shared that all the creative things that people are doing that we don't get to hear about, and someone in her community decided to come up with this idea called night ninjas. And what the night ninjas do is, in the middle of the night, they go out to each to the neighbors' porches and leave little gifts, right? I just, it's again, it seems simple, but it takes something deeper, some kind of that force, what is that, the reconciling force, that I think is a language that you and I connect with, in terms of, it's a poetic language, right? It's an imaginary language. It's a words.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. And so take me, like, how each of us can what can we each do in big or small ways, but tie it into where you were going. And also, can you, I'm 62, brother.
Brother.
senior, right? But when I'm with you, I feel like I'm your age,
Yes.
right? I mean, whatever that is, right?
Right, exactly.
So yeah, I'm going to stop talking, and I just want to hear your thoughts.
Mm. There's this that I've been drawing a lot as a way of just reflecting and kind of moving energy. Like I've always been like using pencil and pen and drawing as an expression, as a tool. But this last year in particular, it has been a really, really beautiful way to kind of drum up and move energy a little bit. And there's one of the drawings that and it started actually this year with this poem called Honor Thy Ache. And I think about the realm of the ache. Like if I think about like however we identify or connect to, I mean, again, it's always so unique to each of us, but what is aching in us, this realm of like, of not only tenderness, but also like fire too. Where have we been hurt? Where are we wounded? Not only by people, but by systems, but also then there's this ache to be seen and to be witnessed and then to be loved and to be, all these different things, this realm. And I always describe it kind of in the gut. I'm for all the Enneagram beloveds out there, I'm a 9 so much. And so I'm just, as you can tell, like even when I grunt and get loud, it's just, it's like, I'm all up in my guts. And so this aching energy feels really, and it's in all of us. And so it's a realm that I think, kind of moving alongside your question. I think there's just, the drawing I have is just people of all different backgrounds, abilities, slowly moving on like a desert surface, and there's trees, and they're walking along the surface, and underneath the surface are like hearts reaching up. They're like reaching up to where people are moving on the soil. So the hearts are kind of trying to break ground. They're trying to get through the soil, but there's and then underneath where the hearts are trying to kind of reach up through the soil, underneath those hearts are these words related to kind of what I shared, but just like, insecurity and pain. And this is when I was hurt, and childhood things that are really complex in each of us, and dreams and love, stories of love, and stories of admiration and attraction even, and times when we felt really alive, and what that, like the taste of those things, and times when we were terrified, and so all these things that are kind of underneath the surface that I feel like, that I believe like help us to intuit and discern, how we grow together and evolve together and treat each other in all kinds of scenarios. And so these aches are kind of underneath all this sediment, and it's trying to break up through. And as people are kind of moving on, the surface in a sense, understandably, to survive real world as it is, like there's this, from the creativity, but also just from, each of us, what does it look like for us to tend to that soil, to nourish that soil? And I keep thinking about, always, I love the wording and the framing. Adrienne Marie Brown, who's an amazing author, her book is called Emergent Strategy. And the terms that these 2 terms that she uses, they resonate around this a lot, but it's kind of what is a nurturing culture and what is an anti-nurturing culture. And so I think about that idea of nurturer, and it's not all, like you said, it's not all soft. It's not just soft. It's like nurturer as in also pushing us to our edges and moving us into a more authentic skin. And so And so I just, with the walking, but also just with, I think just with movement in general, like how do we allow these aches to surface with us and to participate with us and to not be suppressed, to not be buried, to not be, and that's really complex, really deep work. And so I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that's going into the exact question you were asking, but it's what comes up when I think about like these things that are in us. The aching realm for where do we go from here? Like where and how do we, like I think about the best, like, I'm working on this writing project on walking and human movement kind of culture right now, and there's just like thinking about the vestibular system in our bodies that basically communicates to the center, like basically to the core of the earth. It's basically a language between our body and gravity, and what kind of keeps us upright in some ways, communicating with gravity and with the center, like with the kind of the core of the earth and the universe in some sense. I know this is getting a little, but there's something in that like vestibular, like where and how, with so much grace and imperfection, are we undoing stories that have and that are anti-nurturing to you, to me, to people in this time who are facing, to all of us who are facing oppression and disconnection and white supremacy and colonialism, but especially to those who are living it in ways that are horrific. And as a body, as this creative body that's trying to listen and lean in and grow together, how we honor and scan and create a little more room for the aches. I don't know if did that come through? Did that make any sense, James? Oh gosh.
Oh, Jonathan, I don't think people feel this, but I think we're going through a healing, transformative time. And at the end of it, and I think your generation has been moving us towards that, is this deeper sense of inclusion.
Oh my gosh.
And in order to get there, we do need to change the narratives, right? Do away with the stories that no longer serve us. And that's painful for some, right? But yeah. I hope people listen to this conversation. There's so much richness in what you shared with us. And I'm grateful to you, brother. And I look forward to our next walk together. I hope it's not too far in the future.
Oh, me too. And just thank you for hosting and asking the questions that you ask. And I love that we have, I love that we have this shared kind of like long on foot or on bike, like this long journey of, because I know for you, as you and I have talked, I mean, that was so much, there was a lot of healing for both of us in those experiences. And I think, just shedding skin, literally leaving skin on the route, like, and having that shared experience as a gift. So
yeah, and if I could maybe answer my own question to you is,
I would, yeah,
get on the bike, take a walk,
yes,
go on a run, get in the pool and swim. Yeah. And all our brothers and sisters, I watched I watched the Paralympics. Oh my God, right? The possibility that exists for all that beauty and light. So
yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, James. Blessing.